There were many times when I could tell by my own reactivity that I was just at my own threshold, but I somehow wouldn't allow myself to acknowledge that. And that really hurt me. It hurt my family. And I regret not identifying that sooner because I just feel like I was less available to, my kids and my family and my spouse or my parents. Like I could feel my kind of shortness in my reactions to them. And again, it's like, when we overextend ourselves, we end up resenting the people that we're trying to love.
Welcome to the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Collab Oasis Clinical Consultation Groups. Hi, I'm Janine Wolf, and I'm your colleague down the hall. I have a passion for helping fellow therapists get the clinical and collegial support we all need to do this work. And wow, it just keeps getting harder every day. I'm the founder and facilitator of the Collab Oasis Clinical Consultation Groups. I have been a social worker for almost 30 years, and I own a successful solo online private practice. More of us than ever are practicing in solo or online practices, and we all need colleagues to process cases with, commiserate with on those really hard days, and also to celebrate our successes with. In this podcast, I'll bring you insights about trends and changes in our field and sit down with amazing therapists who are doing amazing work. We'll discuss fictionalized cases, ways to practice sustainably, and of course, there will be plenty of laughing. I love laughing with friends. I'm so glad to have you as one of my colleagues down the hall. Hello, everyone. You are listening to another episode of the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. I'm your host, Janine Wolf, joined today by Megan Gunnell. Megan is the founder and director of the Thriving Well Institute, psychotherapist, speaker, #1 best-selling author of Thriving as a Therapist, and international retreat leader with 24 years experience. She has a coaching and consulting business and loves to help others learn how to thrive at work and at home. A recovering perfectionist and recklessly brave, she's not afraid of most challenges. Today, we're going to talk about how therapists can diversify their business model for sustainability so we avoid burnout and truly thrive. Welcome, Megan. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are the thriving therapist. So what a perfect topic for you. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about your journey to becoming a thriving therapist?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'd love to. I actually started my career as a music therapist, and I did that for 10 years before I moved abroad. And then when I came back from living in Munich, Germany with my husband for a while, I knew I wanted to get another degree. And I knew I wanted to do private practice, but I didn't really know which track I wanted to go into, whether it was social work or psychology. But I also knew it was at a point in my life when I didn't have like a huge amount of time to get a degree, and I wasn't sure I was ready for a PhD level commitment. So I found myself pursuing the MSW and just went from there right into private practice. And from there, I started building retreats and groups. And then when COVID hit, I had a very, very full caseload with a wait list. And then I was inundated, like most therapists were, with a ton of referrals. And I happened to also start the little tiny Facebook group called Thriving Therapist in December of 2019, which
is huge now,
which is kind of too big now. It's a wonderful problem to have, but it is kind of blowing my mind how fast we've grown in the last few years. I guess it's a topic that really resonates with lots of therapists. But I also felt like I had to really address this inundation of referrals, and I really didn't know what to do other than try to build a group practice at a time when I really couldn't afford to do it. But I did. I built a group practice, slowly filled one caseload at a time. And that was my first real way of buying back some time for myself. So when I did that, I stopped taking new referrals, made all my wonderful team members take the new referrals that were coming into the group practice. And I slowly reduced my one-on-one work to a more sustainable level so that I could also pivot into serving the thriving therapist community with coaching, courses, and retreats.
That's wonderful. And so many of us, we go into the field because we want to do the one-on-one work if we want to go into private practice. And if we end up building our own private practice, you have that entrepreneurial spark where you're just like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing?
Right.
And, it can be a little contagious. And I've loved watching your journey with that.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, it's true. I think all of us who enter into this world of wanting to build a solo private practice are really focused on the therapeutic work, and the one-on-one work is like super rich and super rewarding. I really, really enjoyed it for the bulk of my career. But to be totally honest, I was taking too many clients a week, and I had 35 clients a week for 10 years straight. And I felt like at the end of every week, I was pretty tapped out emotionally and psychologically, mentally, physically. I had very little energy left to give to my loved ones and my family and my spouse and my kids. And I just knew I needed to make a change. So as I started to pivot, I felt like I had more energy and more freedom. And when I diversified my income streams and really learned how to scale my business model, that's when I felt like I was truly thriving.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so many times we are in the thick of it and we don't even have time to step back and process how burnt out we are.
Mm-hmm.
When I was with the group practice, I was seeing clients for 45-minute sessions, and on Mondays I would front stack my week. I would see 12 clients back to back with no breaks. And I
Mm-hmm.
would come home and go into my bedroom and turn out the lights and tell my family, like, don't come in. And then I
Yes.
was like, this is not a way to live a life. This is just
Right.
not serving anybody here.
Right. I did the same thing. I used to come home at the end of a long day. I had the same routine. I would change my clothes, put my hair in a ponytail, lay on my bed, close my eyes. I did like a debrief in my own body, mind, and soul, sort of after every long day. And I felt like if I didn't have that uninterrupted time, that I wasn't really operating at my own highest potential with my family. And everybody paid the price for that, including myself.
I agree. And especially when I have three kids, my younger two are girls. And when they were in high school, high schoolers want to stay up late, and they would come to me at 10 o'clock and say, Mom, can we talk? I'd be like, no, at 10 o'clock, I cannot talk. I have talked all day. I'm a little tapped out. We can do it earlier tomorrow. But that still wasn't ideal for my family. It was still another sign that I was working too much, that I needed to save some of myself for the life I was living. Isn't that the whole point of working, so we can live our lives?
Exactly. And I think that's what a lot of therapists are searching for, is just better balance overall. So there's a lot of ways we can do it. And you can also just maintain a single solo private practice doing one-on-one work exclusively. Being a thriving therapist does not mean you have to do more than that. I just want to be clear on that, because there are lots and lots of ways to have a very successful career, both financially and in freedom and in job satisfaction, by just doing one-on-one therapy work. But you have to set it up correctly. By that, I mean pricing it correctly, making sure you have a well-defined niche, making sure that your referral network knows your value, and protecting your boundaries as a therapist too.
Oh, that's such a big one. It was an individual podcast recently about protecting your boundaries in the many ways as therapists we don't. And it only creates resentment for us in the long run.
So true.
So that's such an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing that I really learned from the pandemic, which I share with my group members a lot, is you need to know your own signs of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And I, interestingly enough, realized that if I'm in a session and I feel like, oh, wow, we've covered so much, and I look at the clock and it's been 12 minutes, I don't know what it is about 12 minutes, but it would always be 12 minutes. If it's been 12 minutes, that's my cue to know, okay, I gotta do something for me. This is not working right now, and certainly not the best for the clients either.
Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth? I can think of a couple examples myself too. When I kind of started to discover that I was really pushing myself too hard, I would feel a sense of like irritation and, irritability when I looked at my phone between sessions, and it would be like blowing up with more client referrals, emails, calls, text messages. I was like, I cannot keep up with this. And I was carrying that full caseload for a long time with no admin support. So I didn't even know that hiring a business manager or a bookkeeper or a virtual assistant was an option for me. So, I just want to encourage therapists to know that there are lots of ways that you can bring back balance by, not just diversifying your business model, but also just changing the way you run your business if you are doing exclusively one-on-one work. But there were many times when I could tell by my own reactivity that I was just at my own threshold, but I somehow wouldn't allow myself to acknowledge that. And that really hurt me. It hurt my family. And I regret not identifying that sooner because I just feel like I was less available to, my kids and my family and my spouse or my parents. Like I could feel my kind of shortness in my reactions to them. And again, it's like, when we overextend ourselves, we end up resenting the people that we're trying to love.
Yes, that's so true. That's so true. So the outsourcing thing is something that I've started speaking up more and more with other therapists. And it can be like outsourcing with having a VA that can do your work, but also outsourcing in your personal life. And for me, I was raised in Virginia in the Bible Belt. And so Southern women do everything. And I finally realized that I really, really, really dislike cleaning my house, but I just couldn't justify paying someone to do that because that was like a waste of money according to the way I was raised. But then when I realized for what I'm going to pay for someone to clean my house for 3 hours, I can have a couple of sessions and more than recoup that money. And I'm enjoying the sessions, not enjoying cleaning my house. And so there's lots of different ways that we can do that kind of outsourcing stuff. And we can get kind of creative with looking at what that looks like. I know someone that outsources her laundry.
Yes. I was just going to use that example. I remember doing a guest blog one time. We did like a little exchange with a woman that I met when I was doing a speaking circuit. She was a author of a book and she was an anesthesiologist and she had 4 kids. So she was doing a speaking circuit. She was an author. She was working at a hospital and raising a family. And I asked her in the interview, how are you keeping all of this going? And she was like, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. And she said, I have a person in my life that I've hired just to manage laundry, linens, towels, and just washer dryer department kind of person. And I'm like, really? So it just never occurred to me to do that. But yes, I think you're right. We have to ask ourselves, what kinds of things do we place value on? And our time is a big commodity. And I think as entrepreneurs, you have to really consider that. Like your time is really your biggest commodity. So are you buying back time by sort of investing in a team of people who could help you with different tasks? Is there something someone could do faster and easier to help expedite something? I mean, I know for a fact that I could certainly sit down and try to work on a graphic inside Canva, but it might take me like 6 days to get it right because it's not my expertise. But I have an incredible virtual assistant who can, produce something overnight. And she loves doing that and is really good at it. So I think I had to sort of get rid of my own guilt around, building a team, because I do think as solo entrepreneurs, we have this fierce sense of independence where we just want to do it all ourselves. And we kind of also probably as therapists have low trust, where it's like, I don't know if I can trust someone on my team to do things for me or with me. But once I really understood a little bit more about management and leadership, I really felt like that's when also my businesses started to really grow and scale, because I was recognizing that in order to do that, I can't do everything myself.
Right. And for me, that includes looking at, what am I doing to build my business? When my dad died last year, we were at the funeral home, we were at a meeting with an attorney, and she said at the beginning of the meeting, like, I am my product. Like, you are paying me for my experience, my brain. And it was so profound to me because I was like, we need to understand that as therapists. Like, when we don't want to, we don't want to invest in continuing education or consultation with peers or self-care and that type of thing. It's like, that is a direct benefit for your business. If your computer was broken, you wouldn't bat an eye about getting a new computer, and really being flexible with the way that we look at our resources and how we're using them and what is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. And even though I hate the word self-care and the way it's been used in the past, investing in that is huge. It's so very, very important.
Right. And the definition of self care doesn't always have to look and feel the same to everyone. So it isn't just a bubble bath, but it might be for someone. But what you're talking about is giving yourself a level of care by investing in your team members, and investing in a support system that might be able to help you, execute what you do best and sort of save time and efficiency. So it is something to really think about that I think again, when we are going through grad school, we have such great clinical education, knowledge, and training to be a great therapist, but we are not really ever taught how to do some of these business aspects. So I don't know about you, but I never got any sort of CEO level prep, in my degree. And I came out feeling like I was floundering because of that.
Right. Yeah. And in general, knowing we also have to invest some time. Like if you're going to hire a VA, you need to learn how to hire a VA, and you do need to learn how to train that VA for what you need them to do. And that one of those things is just, you're kind of drowning before you know you need help, and then you're still drowning as you're trying to get the help, but it's worth the investment. Right. Don't wait till you're drowning to start thinking about hiring a VA. Start learning some of those things so that when you're ready, you can hit the ground running.
Exactly. Yeah, I wish that, when I think about writing the book this year, Thriving as a Therapist, there's a lot of chapters in there that I was thinking about, boy, I wish I would have had this information myself when I graduated. I wanted to kind of fill the gap in the literature because there wasn't a lot out there on, how to build or scale your business successfully. And, I agree with you. There's a lot of topics that therapists need to be thinking about in addition to just being great clinicians and having a sense of readiness for these next steps, even if we're not really thinking about doing those things right now. Like you said, it would be great to kind of think ahead to say, well, what can a VA do for me? Or, what would happen if I did hire a business manager? What kinds of things would they be doing? Or how could I get certain things off my plate? I had a coach one time ask me to make a big list. And down the middle of the list, she said, draw a line down the middle of the page. And I want you to write everything on one side of the page that you have to do yourself, that no one else can do for you. And then on the other side of the page, I want you to make a list of everything that other people could do, to support you. And I was like, oh, that's going to be really easy. I probably don't have much on the right-hand column, And I'm telling you what, when I was done, I had like 2 pages of things that I could have technically outsourced. And it was shocking to me to see the list. So she told me to write a Post-it note, which I still have on my computer today, that says, can anyone else do this task? And when I'm thinking about doing a task myself, I have to say, is there anyone on my team that could do this more efficiently than I could? And would it be cost effective essentially for me to outsource this or, to help have someone on my team help me do this task?
Right. And then I suspect for a lot of us, the learning curve is letting go of the control, finding people that you can train and trust. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. Like so many things in private practice, the more you implement that policy, the easier it gets. The more you trust your team, the easier it gets.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And in the beginning, I went through a couple iterations of team members. Some of them were not the right fit for whatever reason. And I learned very quickly how I could be a better leader. There were a lot of things about communication and just being really clear about what my expectations were and, giving my team member all the respect and, time that they deserve to get a task done, not rushing them, thanking them, involving them in big decisions, asking them to weigh in, like, what do you think? Or do you have everything you need in order to do this job, to the best of your ability? Those were really important questions that I didn't really know I had to ask as a manager, as a leader, as a CEO. And now I kind of have a different mindset when I'm running 3 companies with multiple team members. It's a much different operation than it was when it was just me as a solo provider.
Yeah. And so, what we're talking about here is sustainability, which I'm a huge proponent of. And I preach that all of the time in my consultation groups and like looking at ways that we can be, keep, because most of us don't want to leave the field completely. Some people do, and that's okay. Most of us want to find ways to pivot and, keep doing the parts that we love and not do the parts that we don't. So let's talk about more of these diversifying your business model ideas for sustainability.
Okay, so sustainability is really critical because we know, both of us, we cannot afford to lose any therapists in our industry. We are already at a critical tipping point with not enough providers globally, and that's part of my mission is to help therapists learn how to build, thriving businesses so that they can get out there and serve the people in their community who need them the most. Because what we don't want to have happen is that, people get trained in this degree and then they exit the degree without the know-how on how to be successful in their business development. But also if they are successful in their business development and they're like you and I with really full caseloads at, different times in our lives, then we don't want them to burn out because of the, demand on them. So what I found with the thriving therapist community is in engaging with members, I was really understanding that I had two audiences in that community, which led me to understand what was needed. One audience was looking to, try to figure out how to build a practice. And the other audience was like, I have too many clients. I have a different problem. And now I'm trying to learn how to scale this business in different ways so I can make more money in less time and really monetize and leverage the education, expertise, and training that I have in order to execute something a little bit differently for my business model. So once I heard that and got very clear on what that audience needed, then I was able to myself develop courses for them, retreats, in-person CE summits, coaching programs, both individual and group, that really help them, achieve those goals that they had. But what I'm trying to do for therapists is teach them that there are multiple ways of scaling your business. If you do find yourself at that point where you're like, gosh, my one-on-one caseload is just too full, that's a good problem to have. And there are lots of places you can go from that juncture.
Yes. And such an important part of that I've learned over the years is money mindset, because we are raised up in this field that, we shouldn't want to make money, that we should give everything of ourselves and keep doing it no matter what. And that's just the way it is. And it's just not true. And I'm so thankful for you and so many other therapists who are saying, you can make good money and still serve people and still do good things, and doing good things can look lots of different ways. It doesn't have to mean pro bono sessions, doesn't have to mean therapy at all. It could be something else. But right. Really challenging the thinking that we have in our field that makes us competitive and angry at times with each other.
Very, very true. And what I like to say to that is, yes, we need more money mindset shifting in our industry. And that starts at a grassroots level. But we also need to move from or to and. So what I try to tell people is it's not either or. It's not that you can either help people or make money. You can do both. And sometimes when you look at economies of scale, when you think about scaling a business, what you're trying to do is serve more people in less time. So you can really help maybe 10 people in a group instead of one person at a time throughout your day. You couldn't even see 10 people in a day, but you could see 10 people in a group if you put them all in a group one evening, and then you free up some of those one-on-one sessions to be doing something else. For example, I used to do one-day retreats. And I would have, maybe 50 people in a room, charge about $100 for the day and do a mini retreat. We'd have yoga in the morning, a little self-care workshop, a really healthy, yummy lunch, and then maybe an afternoon of something creative, mandalas, mask making, drum circle, something really cool. And people loved those one-day retreats because they were both accessible and affordable. But I was able to look at working with a budget of $5,000 a day instead of just serving 50 individual clients, one person at a time. So, less my expenses, obviously. I had some expenses for renting the room and such, but it was still really good for me to be able to scale up my offers in that way and stop really only focusing on one-on-one work.
Right. Yeah, that's so important. So what are some of the biggest things you see that keep therapists from thriving? One is money mindset, obviously. or mindset in general.
Yeah, mindset in general, and also maybe just a lack of understanding what the possibilities are. There are a ton of ways that we can serve clients in need, and it doesn't have to look like just these one on one clinical sessions. You can pivot into coaching. You could add retreats, to your docket. You could do groups or workshops or trainings. You can write a manual or an ebook or a real book. You could do all different kinds of things that are possible with your degree. So I try to help people understand, like, gosh, therapists are in the perfect position to offer things really out of the box. Think about corporate wellness programs or HR departments that are looking to help with employee retention and manage burnout for their teams. There are so many skills that are embedded in our knowledge bank that we could certainly offer. But I don't think people are thinking about out of the box opportunities. And if they are, they don't know how to execute them. So it's nice to be able to, be in a community like Thriving Therapist, or even in Elevate, the membership community, where you can really be surrounded by people that are talking about this and thinking this way. And they're doing these things so that you can be inspired to say, gosh, I could do that too. So I think part of it is mindset, and part of it is lack of maybe education or know-how.
And that's been such a wonderful, there's the flip side of the coin with therapist Facebook groups. Yours is obviously one that I enjoy and that doesn't get nasty. There are some that I don't really enjoy because therapists behave in ways that are shocking to me. But those are healthy ways and great ways to network, to meet other people. I have some great friends that I've met through therapist Facebook groups, some I've never met in person, but also just seeing what other people are doing and using that to grow your creativity and let that be your spark that, okay, this person's doing that thing over there, which looks really great. But with my skill set or my interest, I can like shift it this way, and that's going to be perfect for me.
Yeah. I love that too. And I know that there are pros and cons of Facebook in general, and Facebook groups for therapists can be good, bad, and ugly. So you do have to kind of be careful about, where you're sharing things and how they're moderated. But we do try to pride ourselves in Thriving Therapists to be, a very safe and supportive community. We take a lot of time to moderate. We have a very large moderation team, and we're a very highly engaged community. We were ranked by Meta this year as having one of the 33 highest engaging Facebook groups in all of North America. So we do have a lot of activity in our group. And even though it's not like, a million followers, we still have like a really incredibly highly engaged group there. But it does take some effort, certainly to manage that. But I agree with you. I love making connections with other therapists in that area. I think we were all really craving that sense of community, especially at a time when COVID came and we felt so isolated in our career. Many of us pivoting from face-to-face to telehealth for the first time. Like myself, I didn't really know what I was doing when I started doing telehealth sessions and virtual sessions. That was a really scary and lonely time in my profession. So I benefited too from, the friendships that I made and the inspiration that I could glean from, so many other therapists who were saying they felt the same way, or they were trying this or trying that. So it was so wonderful to have resource sharing and great ideas. We try to always have kind of a collaborative spirit in our community, which is partly what I really love about being in that space myself.
Yeah. And it's, there's so much to learn about being in those spaces and what they're good for and how to use them effectively and what to, learn to scroll on by and those types of things. But moderation is key. And I don't think many people unless they moderate a group, have any idea what's involved behind the scenes. It's a lot of work, whole lot of work, but the benefits are, yeah. But when it's done right, like yours and a couple other groups that I really enjoy, the benefits are huge and everyone benefits. Everyone learns and grows from each other.
Mm-hmm. It is. And then it's fun to create sort of a network of therapists where, someone will ask a question and I can now tag people who are in Thriving Therapists where I know that's their expertise, or they have that specialty, or they've done equine assisted therapy, or they've done a retreat for bariatric clients or whatever. So like there's all these different experts now in this community that we can point to for more resource sharing and development, which is just amazing. And there's been some really fun spin-offs from the Thriving Therapist community too. Some people have tried to create like a state Thriving Therapist state group, that's similar to ours, but just for the state of Illinois, for example, or something. So it's kind of fun to see where the inspiration takes us.
Yeah, that's so true. So, having been to one of your amazing summits with a lot of retreat-like aspects, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of budgeting for these types of events and how this kind of goes along with thriving.
Well, budgeting for retreats and retreat planning could be its own course.
I'm sure.
It's a big topic. But what I can tell you is, first of all, always listen to the audience in front of you. So if you are out there listening to this and you have always kind of dreamed of maybe hosting a retreat of your own or a summit or even a one-day workshop, I just want you to really put your ear to the ground and listen to the clients that are asking you for certain things, in your caseload. Because when I started building one-day retreats for busy working moms, I realized they couldn't go away. They couldn't really take the time to go away to like Costa Rica for a week or something, but they still wanted all the benefits of a retreat. And so I built something like a micro retreat for them, and they loved it. And then over the years, I was building my list. And when I was ready to have a weekend retreat or a week-long retreat, I had all these people that already had experienced, my one-day workshops and said, man, if you ever run, a weekend retreat, I'm going to go. But when it comes to like budgeting for a retreat or even the Costa Rica summit, for example, those are big numbers, big spreadsheets, like big contracts with, hotels and Airbnbs, for example, that you do have to, to kind of take into consideration. That does feel like maybe a bit bigger chunk of time that I would have for this podcast to explain all that. But I do have some resources for people on that. There's a chapter in my book about retreat building. There's 2 courses on my website for retreat building. And of course, I do a ton of coaching, helping therapists, execute and launch their own successful sold out retreats as well. But one thing you do want to keep in mind is, yes, you can make them profitable and still make them affordable for your guest. But the one tip I have on that is just really do the math on your venue, because a venue in the States can be very, very expensive, whereas a venue abroad could be more affordable for you and still be incredibly luxurious, or even more luxurious than you could find in the States for that price point. So that's sometimes why you'll find some of the things that I do are abroad, because I found that, renting a villa in Tuscany, for example, is a lot more accessible for me than renting a house with, room for 20 guests and, 11 bathrooms or something in the States. It's just sometimes not economical to do that.
Right. And then on the other side of that coin, for the people who want to go to those events that are kind of poo-pooing the price tag, like many of the paid offerings we have in our world, it is a matter of saying, this is important enough to me. Like I said, you are your own product. I want to invest in that. So going to a summit or a retreat, whether or not CEs are important, whether you need that or not, but planning ahead so you can go and truly enjoy it, and the amazing experience and the networking and all the great things that come with that.
Yeah, for sure. And it is a business expense if it is a business training. Even the mastermind retreats that I run that don't have CEs are still considered tax deductible for people, which is great. But it is an investment and it's not for everyone. But I do try to make, lots of different offers accessible at different price points. So you might see out there in the world retreats that are $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 for people to attend. I am not offering things at that price point because I want to make them accessible for people. So I have to be able to make sure that if I'm going to put 10 months of work into building a summit for 150 people internationally and manage a team and all the costs that are involved with that I can still make it profitable for myself and make sure that it's affordable for my guests. So when you look at the Costa Rica summit we had in February, the price tag was under $1,000. And I think for what you got, that was really remarkable that we were able to do that. But again, I was working with economies of scale because I knew that I was going to have, X amount of guests coming. And I knew that my venue was going to cost me X amount. So I had to kind of play with all those numbers and really calculate that as a business strategist, to kind of look at what makes the most sense for the price point so that I make sure I fill it and sell it out, but also make it, affordable for guests and still profitable for me too.
Right. Yes. And if you're going to put all that work into it, again, it's like with our clients, we're not doing this just because it feels good, but we do have bills to pay and dreams and retirement and all those things that we need to make money for.
Exactly. Exactly.
So we've referenced your book a little bit here and there. Tell us a little bit more about it, would you?
Sure. So the book Thriving as a Therapist came out on June 1st, 2023, and we've hit #1 bestseller in 9 categories on Amazon.
Yay.
Really excited about that. I wrote it out of a grant that I received from Meta because they wanted sustainability for the Thriving Therapist community. And they asked me to come up with a project that they could fund. And I said I needed some, funding to cover the self-publishing and marketing and the book coach and all the editors and all the people that I had working on it. And I needed time to write it. So I was able to use the funds for that, which was wonderful. I want to thank Meta for that award because that was really what made it possible for me to produce this book. And what I tried to do is, infuse the book with lots and lots of resources so that every chapter will help move you through from building your practice to scaling your practice to also taking really good care of yourself, which is the third section of the book, where we talk about creativity and rest and burnout prevention and boundaries and self-care and all of that stuff that helps us, money mindset, that helps us, thrive as therapists. But the goal was that I would make an affordable resource for people and, it would be something that people hopefully would really benefit from. And so far, the response has been amazing. So I feel really good about it. And if you're out there looking for a resource that might be really comprehensive to kind of, fill the gaps of what you didn't learn in grad school, this might be a good place to start.
Yeah, and it's really diverse in the things that you cover. So even if you are seasoned in a private practice and looking for some new ways to re-energize yourself or do something a little bit different, you cover lots of different things in there. And in the opening, the introduction, you share sort of your personal journey that felt a little vulnerable to me. That was so wonderful. I think it's a good way for people to feel relatable, that you're relatable and that type of thing. And so it is a tremendous resource, and the pricing, you really can't get a better price than.
Yes, to have 210 pages under $20 is, I would hope, that's something that every therapist can afford to invest in. And yes, you're right. The first opening story, I debated a lot about whether or not to include that. It's a deeply personal story about my own family history with mental health. And I just really wasn't sure if I should include that or not up until even the very last night before I had to tell my publisher to hit go on the book. I was just debating. I was, really kind of waffling back and forth, but I ultimately decided that the books I love reading as a reader, I love reading the books where authors are honest and transparent about their own struggle and about their own history. And I really appreciate when I can trust an author. And I thought, I'm going to leave it in because I just want to, make sure that everybody knows that if they're looking at me today and they think, wow, this looks like this lady just got really lucky and she's got all these things going for her, it isn't that way. And I just want everyone to realize, like, we all have that personal story about what brought us to the world of mental health. And it probably has something to do with our own family history. So I didn't want to sound like, I had this perfect past that, wasn't challenging for me, because it was. And it also informed me on how to be a better therapist.
Yes, that's so true. And I do so appreciate that type of vulnerability sharing. And in my program, I do that as well, because we need to, when you have people who are benefiting from what you're teaching, it is easy for them to look and say, like, oh, wow, she really lucked out, or they just don't know the path that you took to get there, the many resources, the sleepless nights, all the things of doubting yourself and questioning if I should do this or this. And yeah, it's good to share those things.
Right. And the tears. I mean, I open with a, very vulnerable first couple chapters about what it was like to be pregnant at the end of my grad school program and go try to basically sign a lease on a group practice. And I went home and thought, oh my gosh, I just started a group practice. But then what I realized was, no, you're just on the hook for rent and you have no clients. So what do you think you're doing? It was like, I just started crying. I was like, what did I just do? But this is kind of like the way I operate. Sometimes I'm like building a plane that I'm flying, and I can't always say it's the right way to do it, but I do have kind of a high risk tolerance. So I sometimes jump in with both feet and then have to kind of swim fast to figure out my way to the edge of the dock.
Yes, I do that too. In fact, with my most recent launch with my membership, I just like put out there this amazing going to do? And then I'm like advertising everywhere. And then I was like, wait, at some point you actually have to write the training. Janine, you got to set some time aside to actually write the training. Like I've got it all in my head, but I've got to like be a little more organized about how I'm going to present this information.
I know, it's so true. But that just shows you like that entrepreneurial energy and spirit is really fun. And I do feel a tremendous sense of gratitude that I get to work, for myself, and I get to do things like that I want to do. And I'm not showing up to a job that I don't like anymore. I did that for years. I mean, gosh, we all did that. We all had jobs we didn't really enjoy or bosses that we didn't like working with. And I just didn't want to like have that be my story. So the energy that you describe of just like jumping in, with both feet is really the excitement that entrepreneurs, that's the gift that we have as entrepreneurs, that we can just wake up and create something. Like if I want to build a course or build something, a coaching program or build another retreat, I wait to be inspired to do that. And when I feel the inspiration, I can just use that as momentum to propel me forward, to do these things. So it feels good. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And the other side of that too is when you worked for yourself last year, I essentially took off the second half of the year and did just very minimal work because I worked for myself and because I had multiple income streams. I was able to completely focus on helping care for my dad who was in hospice. And that is such a gift. And as exhausting as it was, I look back on that and I'm like, so many people would not have been able to do that. I didn't have to get anyone's permission. I had to get some things in place. I had to make sure things were being covered that needed to be, but it was such a gift, and like we were both saying, things that we wish we had more time for when our, in earlier days of our careers. Now I've come full circle and I can do that. I can make that a priority. And that's just so amazing.
It is. It's such a privilege of being an entrepreneur that you have the freedom to be able to design your, sort of income streams the way you want to. And it's not to say that it happens overnight. It's not to say that there isn't a lot of hard work behind all of these things, because there is. But when you get to that point where the wheel is turning, you really start to feel momentum. And it's just a really exciting opportunity, I think, to own your own business and be able to create in a limitless way.
Right. Yep. That's very well said. It's a beautiful way to put that. So I want to ask you if you can share a favorite catchphrase or analogy that you like to use with clients.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I was thinking of two examples, so I think I'm going to go with this one. I remember telling clients often that you want to make sure that your life is never at a boiling point, right? So that I would say, just imagine that you have a cold pot on the stove and you're bringing it up to a simmer. You want to be able to identify when you yourself are coming up to a simmer, because you don't want to go right to the boiling point and boil over. So we want to bring you back down to being a cold pot. And sometimes that was just like something that really stuck in people's minds, because they would say, oh my gosh, I could feel myself like starting to simmer. And I recognize I don't want to go higher than that. Like I need to bring it back down. And I think I use that because it was just something that resonated for me. We do a lot of cooking in our house. I'm married to a chef. So when the pots start boiling, like I just would see that as a visual reminder of like, okay, things are getting hot. It's like, what do I need to dial down, in order to maintain my sense of calm or bring my anxiety back down to a cold pot level. And so it was just really something that was super relatable for my clients.
Yeah. And I'm sure for therapists listening, that's a great analogy for them as well. When you're growing that business, to make sure you're not boiling before you think about hiring that VA.
That's right.
That's lots of applications for that in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. Ties right in.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Megan, I've really enjoyed talking with you today. I so appreciate you having taking the time to come on with me today. Can you please tell the listeners where they can find out more about the things that you offer?
Sure. You can hop into the Thriving Therapist Facebook community, or you'll find me at thrivingwellinstitute.com.
Great. And we will be sure to put all of that in the show notes as well. For everyone listening, there are new episodes of the Colleague Down the Hall podcast released every Thursday on all major platforms. Please remember, our work is hard, but it does not have to be lonely.
Thank you so much for listening to the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to colleaguedownthehall.com, where you'll be able to learn more about getting the clinical support you need and resources to help you work in a supported, sustainable way. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your therapy friends and colleagues. Subscribe to the podcast, and if you love this episode, please leave a review.